Sometimes the hardest part of love is not losing someone. It's watching the connection slowly fade while both of you are still standing right there beside each other. One day, the conversations become shorter. The laughter feels quieter. The affection becomes routine instead of meaningful. And somewhere between stress, responsibilities, disappointment, and emotional exhaustion, two people who once felt inseparable begin feeling emotionally distant without fully understanding why. If you've ever looked at someone you love and silently wondered, when did we stop feeling close? You are not alone. What most people never realize is that relationships rarely break all at once. Distance usually happens slowly, in the unanswered emotions, the unspoken frustrations, the affection delayed too many times, the moments where both people feel misunderstood but neither knows how to say it. But here's the hopeful truth. Emotional connection can be rebuilt, not through perfection, not through forcing love, and not through pretending nothing is wrong, but through emotional safety, understanding, presence, and the small moments most couples overlook every single day. Because sometimes healing a relationship doesn't begin with a dramatic conversation. Sometimes it begins with one person choosing softness instead of pride, one moment of listening instead of defending, one quiet reminder that says, "I still care about us." And in this video, we're going to explore why emotional distance happens in relationships, the habits that slowly push couples apart, and the small but powerful ways people begin finding their way back to each other again. There's a moment in many relationships that almost nobody talks about. It doesn't happen during a big fight. It doesn't happen because someone suddenly stops loving the other person. It happens quietly. One day, the conversations become shorter. The laughter doesn't last as long. Goodnight kisses become routine instead of meaningful. And somewhere between responsibilities, stress, exhaustion, and time, two people who once couldn't stay away from each other begin drifting emotionally without even realizing it. If you've ever looked at someone you love and wondered, when did we become distant? You are not alone. Most couples think love disappears dramatically, but real emotional distance rarely arrives like a storm. It arrives softly, in the moments that are missed. The reassurance never spoken, the affection delayed, the feelings buried under pride, the exhaustion mistaken for rejection. And over time, two people who still deeply care for each other begin feeling emotionally unseen. That's the part nobody prepares you for. Because love after years together doesn't survive on excitement alone. It survives on emotional safety. Psychologists who study long-term relationships often describe emotional connection as something the nervous system responds to before the heart even understands it. Human beings naturally move closer to what feels calm, warm, and safe, and slowly away from what feels tense, uncertain, or emotionally heavy. That means connection is often rebuilt not through grand gestures, but through small moments of presence. A softer tone during an argument, a hand resting gently on someone's shoulder, a sincere, "How are you really doing?" Sometimes the people we love are not asking to be impressed. They're asking to feel understood. And that changes everything. Because when someone feels emotionally safe with you again, their walls begin lowering naturally. Not through pressure, not through force, but through peace. And in just a moment, we're going to talk about the first emotional mistake many couples make when trying to reconnect. A mistake that accidentally pushes love further away instead of bringing it closer. Because sometimes the harder people try to save a relationship, the more disconnected it becomes. The biggest mistake people make when love feels distant. When relationships begin feeling emotionally cold, most people panic. And panic changes behavior. Some become louder. Some become clingier. Some become emotionally withdrawn. Others start overthinking every small change. Why are they quieter lately? Why don't they look at me the same way? Did I do something wrong? But here's what many people never realize. Emotional connection cannot grow in an atmosphere of pressure. The more someone feels emotionally cornered, the more their nervous system pulls away to protect itself. That's why forcing conversations rarely creates closeness, and why demanding reassurance often creates more distance. Real intimacy works differently. It grows slowly, quietly, safely. Relationship experts often explain that emotional bonding strengthens when people feel accepted instead of analyzed. In other words, people open up faster when they stop feeling judged. Think about the moments when you felt most connected to someone. It usually wasn't because they said something perfect. It was because their presence felt calm, safe, steady. And strangely enough, many couples lose this without noticing. They become so focused on solving problems that they stop creating warmth. The relationship becomes functional instead of emotional. Conversations revolve around bills, schedules, stress, responsibilities, but almost never, "How's your heart lately?" And over time, emotional loneliness begins growing inside the relationship itself. One woman once described it this way: "We still live together, but emotionally, it felt like we were standing on opposite sides of a wall." That sentence captures what so many couples experience but struggle to explain. Because emotional distance is invisible, you can sit beside someone every day and still feel miles apart. But here's the hopeful part. Distance created slowly can also be healed slowly. Sometimes reconnection begins with something incredibly simple: softer eye contact, listening without interrupting, sitting together without phones, a genuine compliment spoken after months of criticism. Tiny moments, tiny emotional openings, tiny reminders that love is still alive underneath the exhaustion. Because most people don't need perfection to stay connected. They need consistency. They need gentleness. They need to feel emotionally chosen again. And once that feeling returns, something remarkable begins happening. The relationship stops feeling heavy and starts feeling safe again. But there's another truth many couples discover too late. Not every relationship breaks because love disappears. Sometimes love remains, while emotional appreciation quietly fades. And in the next chapter, we'll talk about why feeling emotionally valued matters more than most people realize, especially in long-term relationships where both people secretly wonder if they still matter to each other. Now let's talk about the human need to feel chosen. One of the quietest forms of heartbreak is not being hated. It's being unnoticed. Many people enter relationships believing love will always feel obvious. In the beginning, it usually does. You notice everything about each other: the way they smile when they're nervous, the stories they repeat when they're excited, the tiny habits nobody else pays attention to. But as years pass, familiarity slowly replaces attentiveness. And without realizing it, couples stop expressing appreciation out loud. Not because the love is gone, but because they assume the other person already knows. That assumption creates emotional starvation in many relationships. Because no matter how strong someone appears, every human being still wants reassurance that they matter, that they are valued, desired, appreciated, chosen, especially after difficult seasons of life. Stress changes people. Responsibility changes people. Disappointment changes people. Over time, many individuals begin carrying invisible emotional exhaustion they never speak about. And often, the thing they crave most is not dramatic romance. It's recognition. A simple moment where someone looks at them and silently says, "I still see you." Relationship therapists often explain that emotional appreciation activates feelings of safety and attachment inside the brain. That means genuine affection is not simply emotional. It's biological. Human beings naturally move toward people who make them feel emotionally valued. That's why one sincere compliment can linger in someone's mind for days. And one cold response can create distance that lasts for weeks. Small moments carry enormous emotional weight. One man once admitted during a counseling session, "I didn't realize how lonely I felt until my wife sincerely thanked me for something again." Not because he needed praise, but because appreciation made him feel emotionally visible. That's something many couples forget after years together. People don't stop needing affection just because time has passed. If anything, emotional reassurance becomes even more important. Because adulthood is exhausting. The world is demanding. And sometimes home becomes the only place where someone hopes to feel emotionally safe. That's why tone matters. Patience matters. Gentleness matters. The smallest interactions often shape the emotional atmosphere of an entire relationship. A cold greeting, a dismissive response, constant criticism. These things slowly harden people emotionally. But warmth softens them again. A smile when they walk through the door, listening carefully when they speak, touching their hand during a difficult conversation. Simple things, but deeply human things. And strangely enough, people often remember these moments far more than expensive gifts or dramatic gestures. Because emotional connection is built through consistency, not intensity. And once someone begins feeling emotionally appreciated again, another beautiful change starts happening. Their emotional defenses slowly come down. The sarcasm softens. The distance shrinks. The conversations deepen, not overnight, but gradually, because healing in relationships rarely happens in one dramatic moment. It happens through repeated emotional safety. And in the next chapter, we're going to talk about something even deeper. Why many people secretly stop expressing love the moment they become afraid of rejection, and how fear quietly changes the way people love each other without either person fully realizing it. How fear quietly changes the way people love. Most people think love disappears because feelings change, but sometimes love changes because fear enters the relationship silently. Fear has a strange way of reshaping human behavior. Not loudly, not dramatically, quietly. A person who once expressed affection freely suddenly becomes more careful, more guarded, more distant. Not always because they stopped caring, but because somewhere along the way, they stopped feeling emotionally safe enough to be vulnerable. This happens more often than people realize. Someone reaches for connection and feels ignored. So next time, they hesitate. They express emotion and feel dismissed. So eventually, they stop sharing altogether. Little by little, self-protection replaces openness. And over time, two people who still deeply love each other begin interacting through emotional armor instead of honesty. That's why many relationships don't look broken from the outside. The couple still talks, still functions, still handles responsibilities together. But emotionally, something fragile has changed. The softness is gone. The ease is gone. The feeling of being emotionally understood begins fading beneath routine and unspoken tension. Psychologists sometimes describe this as emotional withdrawal, not because someone wants distance, but because the nervous system begins associating vulnerability with discomfort. Human beings naturally protect themselves from repeated emotional pain. Even small pain, a harsh tone, constant criticism, feeling unwanted, feeling unheard. These moments accumulate quietly over time. And eventually, people stop expressing the parts of themselves most afraid of rejection. One woman once described it this way: I stopped asking for affection because I got tired of feeling foolish for needing it. And sadly, many people understand that feeling immediately, because underneath emotional distance is often something much deeper. The fear of not being wanted the same way anymore. That fear changes people. It makes some become colder. Others become anxious. Others pretend they no longer care at all. But most of the time, the heart underneath is still hoping for reconnection, still hoping to feel chosen again. That's why healing often begins not with dramatic declarations, but with emotional reassurance. Simple things like, I'm listening. I understand. I still care about us. These moments calm the nervous system more than people realize. Because emotional safety is not built through perfection. It's built through consistency, through knowing that love will not disappear the moment vulnerability appears. And strangely enough, the strongest relationships are not the ones without fear. They are the ones where two people learn how to make each other feel safe enough to lower their defenses again. That's where true intimacy begins. Not in performance, not in perfection, but in emotional honesty. And once fear starts leaving the relationship, something unexpected begins returning. Playfulness, softness, warmth. The little emotional details couples thought were gone forever. Because underneath emotional exhaustion, many people are still longing for the same thing they wanted from the beginning: to feel deeply understood by the person they love. And in the next chapter, we'll talk about one of the most powerful forms of connection people overlook completely: the quiet power of emotional presence. Because sometimes the strongest way to say, I love you, has nothing to do with words at all. The quiet power of emotional presence. There's something many people discover too late about love. Presence matters more than performance. In the beginning of relationships, people often focus on excitement. The dates, the long conversations, the passion, the constant attention. But over time, life becomes heavier. Responsibilities increase. Stress builds. Energy changes. And eventually, many couples stop truly being present with each other. They sit in the same room while emotionally living somewhere else. One person scrolls through their phone. The other quietly overthinks in silence. Conversations become automatic. How was your day? Fine. What should we eat? I don't know. And slowly, emotional intimacy begins fading beneath distraction. Not because love disappeared, but because attention did. Human beings have a deep emotional need to feel emotionally witnessed, to feel that someone is truly with them in a moment. Not halfway listening. Not distracted. Not waiting to respond. Just present. Relationship researchers often explain that emotional connection strengthens most during moments of undivided attention. Because attention communicates value. It silently says, "You matter enough for me to slow down." That feeling is powerful, especially in a world where everyone feels mentally exhausted all the time. One husband once admitted after years of marriage, "The moment I realized we were drifting apart was when I stopped feeling noticed. Not criticized, not hated, just emotionally unseen." And that emotional invisibility creates loneliness even inside loving relationships. That's why presence can heal things words cannot. A soft glance across the room, listening carefully without interrupting, putting the phone away during a conversation, remembering small details someone mentioned days ago. These moments seem ordinary, but emotionally, they are enormous. Because love is often felt through attention, not grand speeches, not expensive gifts, but through consistency, through emotional availability, through calmness. One woman shared something beautiful after reconnecting with her partner. "We didn't fix everything overnight. We just started slowing down long enough to actually feel each other again." That sentence captures something deeply important. Most relationships do not need constant intensity to survive. They need emotional presence. The feeling that someone is emotionally there with you instead of simply existing beside you. And interestingly, the nervous system responds immediately to this kind of energy. When someone feels emotionally safe and fully seen, their body relaxes naturally. Their tone softens. Their guard lowers. Their warmth returns. Because connection grows where emotional tension disappears. That's why some couples rediscover closeness not through dramatic romance, but through quiet rituals. Morning coffee together, evening walks, lingering eye contact, small touches during ordinary moments. Tiny acts of attention repeated consistently over time. And eventually, those moments begin rebuilding something many couples thought they lost forever. Emotional closeness. Not the intense butterflies of early romance, but something deeper, something steadier, a feeling of emotional home. Because real love matures over time, it becomes quieter, softer, less about proving love, and more about protecting it. And in the next chapter, we're going to explore one final truth that changes the way many people understand relationships completely. Why lasting love is not built by finding the perfect person, but by learning how to keep choosing each other through changing seasons of life. Love is not about perfection, it's about returning to each other. One of the biggest myths people believe about relationships is that lasting love happens naturally. That if two people are truly meant for each other, connection should always feel easy. But real love doesn't work that way. Even the strongest relationships experience distance sometimes. Misunderstandings, stress, emotional exhaustion, moments where two people stop understanding each other clearly. The difference is not whether distance appears. The difference is whether two people are willing to find their way back to each other again. Because love is not sustained by perfection. It's sustained by return. The decision to keep choosing connection even after difficult seasons. To soften after arguments instead of hardening permanently. To reach for understanding instead of pride. To remember that the person beside you is human too. Human beings change over time. Life changes them. Pain changes them. Responsibility changes them. The confident person you met years ago may now carry silent stress they never speak about. The affectionate person who once expressed everything easily may now struggle to communicate emotions they don't fully understand themselves. And sometimes people mistake these changes for loss of love. But often, it's simply the weight of life reshaping how love is expressed. That's why compassion matters so deeply in long-term relationships. Not blind acceptance of harmful behavior, but emotional understanding. The ability to pause long enough to ask, what might this person be carrying right now? Because many people are fighting silent emotional battles their partners never fully see. Fear of failure, fear of aging, fear of not being enough anymore. And beneath all of it is often the same quiet hope. Please don't stop loving me because I'm struggling. That's the vulnerable truth hidden inside many relationships. Even strong people want reassurance. Even independent people want emotional safety. Even guarded people want to feel chosen. One elderly couple married for over 40 years once shared the secret they believed kept them together. The husband smiled softly and said, "We learned how to come back after difficult days. Not after perfect days. After difficult ones. That's what lasting love really is. Not never hurting each other. Not never drifting. But refusing to let distance become permanent. Choosing to reconnect again and again. Sometimes through conversations. Sometimes through forgiveness. Sometimes through simple, quiet presence. Because over time, love becomes less about intensity and more about steadiness. Less about excitement and more about emotional refuge. A place where two imperfect people continue meeting each other with patience, softness, and care. And strangely enough, that kind of love often becomes more beautiful with time. Not because life becomes easier, but because the relationship becomes deeper, more honest, more intentional, more real. By this stage of life, many couples realize something profound. The greatest form of intimacy is not constant passion. It's emotional peace. Knowing someone still reaches for your hand after hard seasons, still looks for you in crowded rooms, still chooses you in quiet, ordinary moments. That kind of love is rare. And when people protect it gently, it can survive far more than they ever imagined. So if your relationship has felt distant lately, don't assume love is gone. Sometimes hearts simply need time, patience, and emotional safety to find each other again. Because the strongest relationships are not the ones that never struggle. They are the ones where two people keep returning to love, even after life changes them both. Fixing emotional distance in a relationship usually doesn't happen through one huge conversation or one dramatic gesture. It happens through small, repeated changes that slowly rebuild emotional safety, trust, warmth, and connection again. Here are some of the healthiest ways couples begin repairing these issues in real life. 1. Stop treating every conversation like a problem to solve. When people feel disconnected, they often panic and turn every interaction into, "We need to talk. What's wrong with us? Why are you acting different?" But constant pressure can make someone emotionally shut down even more. Sometimes connection returns faster through calmness than interrogation. Instead of, "You never talk to me anymore," try, "I miss feeling close to you." That changes the emotional energy completely. One creates defensiveness. The other creates openness. 2. Bring back small moments of warmth. Many relationships don't lose love first. They lose small daily affection. Things like greeting each other properly, touching each other casually, laughing together, checking in emotionally, sitting together without distractions. Tiny moments matter more than people realize. A relationship can survive without constant excitement, but it struggles without warmth. Start rebuilding through eye contact, gentle tone, appreciation, kindness, small affection, calm presence. These things slowly soften emotional walls. 3. Learn to listen without defending yourself immediately. A lot of couples stop feeling emotionally safe because every vulnerable conversation turns into arguing, explaining, defending, counterattacking. Sometimes people don't need immediate solutions. They need to feel heard first. That means listening fully, not interrupting, asking questions gently, validating emotions even if you disagree. You don't always have to agree with someone's feelings to respect them. Emotional safety grows when people feel understood instead of dismissed. 4. Bring back appreciation. Long-term relationships often become overly focused on responsibilities and problems. People stop expressing gratitude. But appreciation is emotional oxygen in relationships. Start noticing things again. Simple things like, "Thank you for helping. I appreciate you. You look nice today. I'm glad you're here." It sounds small, but feeling emotionally valued changes the entire atmosphere between two people. 5. Stop trying to win the relationship. In unhealthy relationship cycles, couples begin protecting pride more than connection. Arguments become competitions. Who's right matters more than understanding each other. But healthy couples eventually learn something important. You can win the argument and still damage the relationship. Sometimes peace matters more than being technically correct. That doesn't mean accepting disrespect. It means learning when to soften, pause, apologize, compromise, or approach conflict more gently. 6. Rebuild emotional friendship. Strong romantic relationships are usually built on friendship underneath. Many couples stop spending relaxed time together. Everything becomes stress, schedules, or survival mode. Try rebuilding simple connection. Walks, cooking together, watching something together, talking without phones, joking again, sharing memories. Asking meaningful questions. Emotional closeness grows through shared emotional experiences, not just physical proximity. 7. Give healing time. One of the biggest mistakes people make is expecting immediate emotional repair. If distance built slowly over months or years, reconnection may also happen slowly. That's normal. Don't mistake not fixed instantly for failure. Consistency matters more than intensity. Small healthy behaviors repeated over time create trust again. 8. Be honest about deeper problems. Some issues cannot be fixed through surface affection alone. If there's repeated betrayal, emotional abuse, manipulation, constant disrespect, dishonesty, or unresolved resentment, those things need honest conversation and sometimes outside support from a trusted adult, counselor, therapist, or relationship mentor. Healthy love requires both people participating. One person cannot carry an entire relationship alone. 9. Remember that people need emotional safety to open up. Many people become distant when they feel criticized constantly, unwanted, ignored, emotionally unsafe, or afraid of rejection. People open emotionally when they feel calm, accepted, respected, and valued. That's why kindness matters so much. Not fake positivity, real emotional gentleness. 10. Focus less on getting the old relationship back. This surprises many people. Trying to recreate the exact past often creates disappointment. People change. Relationships evolve. The goal is not becoming the exact same couple you once were. The goal is building a healthier version of connection now. Sometimes mature love becomes quieter, but also deeper, steadier, and more emotionally meaningful. And honestly, many couples reconnect not because everything became perfect, but because both people finally started feeling emotionally safe enough to love each other honestly again. And maybe that's the real truth about love. Not the butterflies at the beginning, not the excitement everyone talks about, but the quiet decision to keep choosing each other, even after life becomes heavy. Because real connection is not built in perfect moments. It's built in the ordinary ones. In the way you look at someone when they're tired, the way you stay during difficult seasons, the way your voice softens after an argument instead of growing colder. Over time, love changes. It becomes less about chasing perfection and more about becoming a place of peace for each other. A hand reached out during silence. A forehead kiss after a long day. A quiet, "Are you okay?" when the world feels overwhelming. Those are the moments that keep hearts connected. And sometimes, after months or even years of emotional distance, all it takes is one sincere moment of warmth for two people to remember. We were never truly strangers. We were just hurt, tired, and waiting to feel safe with each other again. Because when love is real, it doesn't disappear easily. It waits. In the pauses between conversations, in the lingering glances, in the small acts of care people think go unnoticed. And maybe the most beautiful part of love is this: being deeply known by someone and still being chosen anyway. So tonight, before you go to sleep, take a moment to appreciate the people you love. Hold them a little closer. Speak a little softer. Listen a little longer. Because sometimes the smallest gestures become the memories people carry forever. And if this video spoke to your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories and relationship insights that remind us all what real connection truly feels like. Tell us in the comments, what do you think keeps love alive the longest? Because your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today.